Hello, beta. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the first lecture of an absolutely new journey that we are starting today, which is on econometrics. This is one of the most interesting subjects and one of my favorite subjects that I kind of like to do, right? And it is so interesting that it has a lot of applications, right? And if you will go ahead and look into your syllabus, right, the syllabus is not at all theoretical. Please read through it. It says that for each chapter that you go ahead and you do, you need to go ahead and you need to do applications using R, Excel, Gretel, etc., Strata, etc. So each and every concept that I am going to go ahead and cover in econometrics, it is going to be followed with practical information, right? We will go ahead and we will try to see how can I analyze the table? How can I read the data set in R? How can I go ahead and how can I read the data in Gretel, in Stata, right? So reading of that information also we will be covering in these lectures. Okay, beta? Okay, let's start. So to begin with, the first thing that I want to go ahead and I want to do is I want to talk about what is econometrics first of all. So econometrics. Economics with maths clubbed together, right, beta? So economics, maths, clubbed together. When we go ahead and when we try to mathematically analyze what economic data is saying, just for example, let's say, all of us know, let's take some examples first. All of us know there is an inverse relationship between quantity demanded and price. But when I go ahead and I give you an equation to represent it, I tell you, look, beta, that quantity demanded is 100 minus 0.8 p. It means मैंने इसको एक relationship में convert किया है. I have converted this in form of a relationship, right? So what can you tell me about this? You can tell me that, look, ma'am, if you will keep price as 100 now, then your quantity demanded will be 100 minus 0.8 into 100, which means your quantity demanded will be 100 minus 80, which is going to be 20. But you know what, ma'am? If you will keep your price as 101, then your quantity demanded will be 100 minus 0.8 into 101. So it will be 100 minus 80.8. It is going to be 19.2. This is doing it mathematically. क्या पता चलता है इससे? What do we realize from here? We realize that when your price increased, देखो price बढ़ गया ना? When your price increased, कितने से बड़ा बचे? From 100, it has gone to 101. So the change in price is 101 minus 100, which means 1. So when your price has increased by 1, what has happened to your quantity demanded? Earlier it was 20. Now your quantity demanded is 19. So your quantity demanded has gone to 19.2, जो पहले 20 थी. Earlier the quantity demanded was 20. Now the quantity demanded is 19.2. So your quantity demanded, beta, it has fallen by 0.8 units. This should ring a bell. क्या समझ में आता है इससे? What do we understand from here? Isn't this 0.8 coming here only? It is. So when I increased my price by 1 unit, when I increased my price from 100 to 101, my quantity demanded, it decreased by 0.8 units, exactly the coefficient that has been represented here. यही तो ये 0.8 reflect करता है. So now let us try to elaborate this further. But if you go ahead and you see, suppose I do a differentiation. मैं इसको differentiate कर देती हूँ. I will get dq by dp is equal to minus 0.8. I am getting dq by dp is equal to minus 0.8. And if I will keep dp at 1, that means price changes by 1. Just put dp as 1. You will get this as minus 0.8. So your dq will come as minus 0.8. Again telling you the same thing, that when your price changes by 1 unit, जब price 1 unit से change हुआ, quantity changes by 0.8 units. Quantity 0.8 units से change हो गई. When you increased your price by 1, देखो, when you are increasing your price by 1, your quantity is decreasing. Negative sign, तो decreasing. Negative sign है ना, decreasing. So your quantity is decreasing by 0.8 units. This mathematical relationship, when we try and we depict things mathematically, जब मैं, economics always told me there is inverse relation between quantity demanded and price. Economics हमेशा से बोल रहा था कि quantity demanded and price have a negative relationship. But when I show them mathematically कि boss, when quantity demanded will, when price will increase by 1, quantity demanded will fall by 0.8 units. This is a mathematical relationship. When we do this, that is called econometrics, putting maths in economics. Am I making some sense? पहले हमें ये समझना होगा econometrics होता क्या है. We don't want to just deep dive into the book. We want to understand what is econometrics. So putting maths in economics is equal to econometrics. Clear हुआ? Okay. Now let's just for a second try to deep dive and understand what are the type of variables. So I will write down the next title as my type of variables. Right, beta? So I can divide my variables in two parts, two types. One is called independent variable. Right? And second is called as dependent variable. Word should be enough. Independent, किसी चीज से फर्क नहीं पड़ता, independent है. Dependent, dependent depends on the independent. Dependent तो depend करेगा ना, it will depend on the independent variable. Take some example. This is my favorite example. I will give literally in every lecture. Your happiness is a dependent variable. किस पे depend करती है खुशी? It depends on maybe your marks, maybe your pocket money, maybe on the happiness of your girlfriends, on the happiness of your boyfriends. It can depend on anything, on the happiness of your parents. These are independent. These are independent variables. मार्क्स, पॉकेट मनी, सब इंडिपेंडेंट है. Happiness is a dependent variable. Happiness depends on it. Right, beta? Take another example. Quantity demanded. It is dependent. किस चीज पे डिपेंड करती है क्वांटिटी डिमांडेड? इट डिपेंड्स ऑन प्राइस ऑफ द कमोडिटी. इट इज इंडिपेंडेंट. अच्छा, if I have to write a general function, if I just have to say quantity not demanded, then it can depend on income also. It can depend on taste and preferences also. है ना? These are all my independent variables. Are you getting it? Savings. किस पे डिपेंड करेगा savings? It will depend on first of all my income. But it will also depend on my lifestyle, ना? क्या मैं कंजूस हूं या क्या मैं बहुत ज्यादा खर्चीली हूं? How do I like to spend? So this is my independent variable. But saving is my dependent variable. Am I clear with it? Independent. Dependent. Depends on the independent variable. Independent variable is also called as the explanatory variable. Explanatory मतलब जो explain करे, the one that explains. And dependent is also called as explained variable. जो explain हो रहा हो, the one that is getting explained. So the dependent variable is called the explained variable. उसको explanation मिल रही है. It is getting explanation. But the independent variable is called the explanatory variable. उसको explain करने को मिल रहा है. It is explaining the explained variable. Now, throughout your book, बच्चे, every time, it's a notion that we are using, huh? Every time you will see that whenever we will use a dependent variable, जब भी हमें कोई dependent variable को depict करना होगा, for depicting a dependent variable, we will always use the variable y. But whenever we need to depict an independent variable, we will use the variable x. So the variable x will be used to depict the independent variable, and the variable y will be used to depict the dependent variable. अच्छा question. What if, सोच के बताओ, what if you have more than one independent variable? तो फिर हम कैसे रिप्रेजेंट करें? जैसे for example, here, your happiness was a dependent variable, but your happiness was dependent on marks, pocket money, happiness of your parents, falan dhimkan, how many movies have been released, Netflix account is there or not, etc., etc. How will you show more than one independent variable? Well, then you will use like this. X1 is the first independent variable. X2 is the second independent variable. X3 is the third independent variable. X4 is the fourth independent variable, etc., 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 etc. समझे? अच्छा, another thing, very important note. अभी ही हम जिंदगी भर के लिए इसको मुट्ठी बांध के सीख लेते हैं. Permanent need, we need to learn this thing forever, ever, ever, ever. क्या बेटा? Regression is very different. Regression does not imply causation. लिख लो पहले, then I will explain. Please write down. Please keep in mind, please write down. Regression does not necessarily imply causation. Regression does not imply causation. मतलब देखो, कॉजेशन मतलब when one thing causes another, एक चीज की वजह से दूसरी हो रही है, that is causation. Causation is always justified through economic theory. जैसे हाँ, quantity demanded is affected by price, but ये economic theory है ना, right? जैसे happiness is affected by pocket money. This is a theory which I am putting forward. So when you talk about causation कि यार एक की वजह से दूसरी चीज हो रही है, हाँ बेटा, when you are putting causation in place, that one thing is causing another, that is causation. But sometimes what will happen, if I give you two random data sets, I tell you, look, my independent variable is y. Y values are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 9. This is my dependent variable. My independent variable is x, and x values are 10, 12, 14, 15, 2, 5, 7. I tell you, do regression between them. I will teach you. कैसे करना है regression is a big thing. बाद में सीखेंगे. But I tell you, do regression between them. You will get some results. कुछ result तो आएंगे. कोई equation तो बनेगी. Maybe you will get an equation like this, that y is equal to 100 plus 4x. ऐसा कुछ equation आ गया suppose. But this does not mean x causes y. Regression does not imply causation. मुझे तो पता ही नहीं है ये x y है क्या. I don't know what these x y's are. So how can I go ahead and tell that one is causing another? मैं कैसे बोल दूं एक की वजह से दूसरा हो रहा है? Right? So causation is justified on the basis of economic theory. अगर किसी चीज की वजह से कुछ हो रहा है तो थ्योरी लाओ ना. Give me Okun's law. Give me Phillips curve. Give me some theory. Whether it is economics theory, whether it is physics theory, whether it is chemistry theory, I don't care. There is some theory in the background. If there is some theory, then on the basis of that theory, if you come up with something, that is causation, right? But regression itself does not imply causation. So let's write this down crystal clear, beta. We will keep this in our mind forever. That regression does not necessarily, it can mean, ऊपर जो हमने किया वो causation था, but regression भी बनाया. So regression does not mean causation. Regression is just going ahead and saying that, look, I am trying to go ahead and I am doing relationship between explained and unexplained variable. मैं एक relationship बता रहा हूँ कि explained और unexplained कैसे related है, explained और explanatory कैसे related है, how are dependent and independent related to each other. But one is causing other. That's a big thing to say, right? So please write down forever in mind that causation, मतलब एक की वजह से दूसरा होना, cause must be backed by economic theory. So causation must be backed up by economic theory. अच्छा, क्वेश्चन है, why do regression? क्यों सीख रहे हैं हम ये पूरा econometrics? What is the reason? What are my objectives? Why do I want to go ahead and why do I want to do regression? So question, very important. What are the objectives of regression? कुछ भी पढ़ने से पहले ये जानो कि पढ़ना क्यों है. So what are objectives of regression? Right, beta. Objective number 1. वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, और ये चीज थोड़ी देर में समझ में आएगी जब हम इस चैप्टर को समझ लेंगे, देन वी विल अंडरस्टैंड दिस थिंग इन डिटेल. बट ऑब्जेक्टिव नंबर 1, you want to find out the mean or average value of the dependent variable given independent variable. Right, beta? What does this mean? It means कि if I tell you that My dependent variable is happiness. हाँ बच्चे. Then if I will increase your pocket money, अगर मैं आपकी pocket money को बढ़ाती हूँ, if I will increase your pocket money, then on an average, what is the amount by which your happiness will increase? कितने से happiness बढ़ेगी on an average? That is basically your objective. So we want to ask ourselves कि अगर मैं independent variable को बढ़ाती हूँ, if I increase the independent variable, on an average, how much will the dependent variable change? Now, why average only? क्यों हम average की बात कर रहे हैं? That will be clear in some time. Give me some time as we progress. But the first thing we want to understand is that if we change independent, if we change independent variable, then by what amount will dependent variable change on an average? Dependent variable change on an average. So on an average, dependent variable कितने से बदलेगा? जब independent variable will change, that is what is called as your first objective of regression, right, beta? Coming to the second objective of regression. The second objective of regression is called as testing of hypothesis. All of you have gone ahead and done hypothesis testing in detail. What is hypothesis testing doing? Hypothesis testing mein what do? We set up a null hypothesis. We set up an alternative hypothesis. We test null against hypothesis, alternative hypothesis. Right? We either reject or not reject the null. यही तो करते हैं. What is hypothesis testing? You set up null, you set up alternative, you test null against alternative, you reject or don't reject. यही 4 steps हैं. This is all you do. अब थोड़ा सा सोचो. Listen to me very carefully. Suppose I tell you that I want to test whether quantity demanded is affected by taste and preferences or not. Right? So I will set up a null hypothesis. It is not affected. अब ये कैसे करेंगे? Again, we will learn over the semester. But अभी के लिए I will set a null. It is not affected. I will set alternative. It is affected. I will test null against alternative. I will test null against alternative. Right? So to test whether one is dependent on the other or not, क्या एक चीज दूसरे पे dependent है या नहीं है? To do any kind of testing, to test the economic theory, that is where we will use regression. Clear हुआ? Beta third. We can use regression for the purpose of, बहुत important है, this is known as extrapolation. Extrapolation और extrapolate का मतलब होता है predicting the future. So extrapolation means prediction of future. What does extrapolation mean? It means predicting the future. ध्यान से सुन. Listen to me carefully. Beta, I have given you the government expenditure of year 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016. इनका गवर्नमेंट एक्सपेंडिचर का वैल्यू मैंने आपको दे दिया. आई हैव गिवन द वैल्यू ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट एक्सपेंडिचर टू यू. I have gone ahead and I have told you, look, this is the GDP. So when government was spending this much amount, GDP was this much. When government was spending this much amount, GDP was this much amount, GDP was this much, and so on and so forth. So for each year, har saal ka, I have gone ahead and I have given you the government expenditure and I have given you the GDP of the government, of the country. Now, I am asking you that tell me that if in 2050, India wants to achieve a GDP of 50,000 billion crores, whatever. It wants to achieve this much GDP. How much expenditure should government do? अगर 2050 में, if in 2050 government wants to achieve a particular amount of GDP, तो उसके लिए गवर्नमेंट को कितना खर्चा उस साल करना पड़ेगा? What will you do, बेटा? Based on today's data, you will form some relationship. Based on the current data, आप कोई relationship बना लोगे. कैसे बनेगा? I will teach you. How you will form the regression is a later thing. First, try to understand why we want to do it. Huh? So you formed some relationship. आपने मुझे बोला, look, ma'am, the relationship is that GDP is equal to 500 plus 0.9 times government expenditure. इस डेटा के हिसाब से, the data that you have provided me, ma'am, I have got this regression equation in hand. Suppose this is example regression equation. Ma'am, I have got this regression equation in hand. Now, ma'am, that now you tell me that if you will put GDP equal to 50,000, this is what you want to achieve now. I will put it in this equation and I will find G for you. मैं आपका G निकाल देती हूँ. So, ma'am, I will put 50,000 here and I will say this is equal to 500 plus 0.9 G and I will find out the value of G for you. This is called extrapolation. So what is extrapolation? क्या कर रहे हैं हम इस पूरे केस में बेटा? We are trying to find out, finding the value in the future, of the future, not in the future, value of the future based on relationship derived at present. तो आप प्रेजेंट का रिलेशनशिप डिराइव कर लो एंड बेस्ड ऑन द प्रेजेंट रिलेशनशिप आई विल गो अहेड एंड आई विल टेल यू द फ्यूचर value. That is called as extrapolation. Am I clear? What is extrapolation, bache? Okay. Last is nothing actually. The book just says one or more objectives combined. भाई जरूरत थोड़ी है कोई एक ही चीज करनी हो, दो चीजें मिलके भी तो करी जा सकती हैं. We can combine the two things together also, no? That is what it is saying. This is the introduction to econometrics, beta. What is econometrics and why we require econometrics? In the next lecture, we will start with the basics of econometrics. अभी तो हमने कुछ सीखा ही नहीं है, अभी तो हमने बस ये सीखा है econometrics होती क्या है. Now in the next lecture, we will start with what is known as population regression function. Right, beta? So we will start with population regression function in the next class. Okay, see you. Thank you.